The first email didn't insult Jason Whitlock. It sentenced him. The subject line was short, violent, impossible to ignore. Burn him alive. Whitlock stared at his screen. A veteran of sports media wars, a man who'd been booed, cancelled, and dragged for decades. Yet this felt different. This wasn't debate. This wasn't outrage. This was a threat wrapped in certainty. And it all traced back to one name: Angel Reese. Within hours, the messages multiplied. Different senders, different accounts, same chilling tone. You deserve to die. We know where you live. Keep Angel Reese's name out of your mouth. According to Whitlock, the emails arrived like clockwork, flooding his inbox after he criticized the WNBA star's behavior and the culture surrounding her. Not her talent, not her stats, the system around her. Social media ignited. Screenshots leaked. Timelines split into warring camps. Defend Angel at all costs. Silence the critic. Burn the heretic. In a league riding unprecedented momentum, fueled by rivalries with Caitlin Clark, Paige Buchers, and a new generation of stars, one opinion suddenly triggered a level of rage that felt organized, surgical, and terrifying. Whitlock went public, and the shockwaves rattled the WNBA ecosystem. Because if a media veteran could be told to die for a take, what happens to anyone else who dares to speak? And the most disturbing question hung in the air, unanswered and explosive. Were these just fans losing control? Or was something far more powerful protecting Angel Reese at any cost? Forever. Before the emails, before the threats, before the words "burn him alive" ever appeared in Jason Whitlock's inbox, this story was already boiling under the surface of the WNBA. Angel Reese didn't arrive in the league quietly. She arrived as a headline, a symbol, a lightning rod. From college superstardom to instant professional scrutiny, she was never just evaluated on rebounds or footwork. She was judged on tone, confidence, expression, and presence. Every smile was decoded, every glare was clipped, every emotion was framed as either revolutionary or reckless, depending on who was watching. Reese came into the WNBA carrying more than expectations. She carried narratives. To some, she represented unapologetic swagger in a league that had long asked its stars to be polite, grateful, and silent. To others, she represented everything they feared about athletes gaining too much cultural power. That divide hardened quickly. Praise turned into obsession. Criticism turned personal. And every discussion about Angel Reese became a proxy war about race, gender, fame, and who gets protected when the spotlight burns hottest. Jason Whitlock had watched this pattern for years. He'd seen stars elevated beyond criticism and critics punished for speaking out. When he commented on Reese, he wasn't attacking her talent. He was questioning the ecosystem around her. The branding, the immunity, the idea that certain players had become untouchable because too much money, influence, and image was at stake. In Whitlock's world, that was a dangerous precedent, and he said so, publicly, bluntly, without cushioning the blow. That was the spark. Because Angel Reese isn't just a player. She's a brand embedded in a league desperate to capitalize on momentum. Rivalries with Caitlin Clark, Paige Buchers waiting in the wings, Team USA implications, endorsement deals stacking up. The WNBA wasn't just selling basketball anymore. It was selling personalities, storylines, heroes, and villains. And Angel Reese sat at the center of that storm, adored by millions and defended with a ferocity that blurred the line between fandom and enforcement. Whitlock's criticism landed in a climate already primed for explosion. Social media had trained fans to treat disagreement as betrayal. Algorithms rewarded outrage. Defending your favorite star became a moral duty, not a preference. And when Whitlock challenged the narrative, some fans didn't hear analysis. They heard an attack on identity, on representation, on power. Behind the scenes, pressure was everywhere. Players whispered about walking on eggshells. Media figures admitted certain names were off limits. Sponsors monitored sentiment graphs more closely than box scores. League executives preached growth while quietly fearing backlash. In that environment, criticism wasn't just unpopular, it was dangerous. Angel Reese stayed silent. That silence was interpreted 1,000 different ways. Strategic, guilty, smart, cowardly. Supporters claimed she didn't owe anyone a response. Critics argued her silence emboldened the mob. The truth sat somewhere in between, buried under noise and emotion. And Jason Whitlock, whether he intended to or not, stepped directly into that minefield. He didn't just criticize a player. He challenged a system built on protection, profit, and fear. Long before the threats arrived, the conditions for them already existed. All it took was one comment to expose how volatile the ground really was. and how far some people were willing to go to defend Angel Reese's name at any cost. The moment Jason Whitlock went public, the temperature changed instantly. This wasn't a slow burn, it was a detonation. Screenshots of the emails spread faster than game highlights. Timelines flooded with rage, denial, mockery, and fear all at once. Some fans dismissed the threats as exaggeration, others cheered them. And that's when the conflict crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed because death threats weren't being condemned. They were being justified. Whitlock revealed details that stunned even his critics. The emails weren't random, they weren't sloppy, they followed patterns. Similar phrasing, similar timing, messages arriving in clusters, late at night, early morning, during peak engagement hours. Different accounts, same energy, same obsession, same warning. Stop talking about Angel Reese, or else. This wasn't fandom acting out in isolation. It felt coordinated, intentional, designed to intimidate, and then came the first shocking twist. One email didn't just threaten him, it referenced personal details, his location, his routines, information that wasn't easily available. That's when Whitlock stopped framing this as harassment and started calling it what it felt like in an attempt to silence him through fear. The tone shifted from outrage to alarm, because once someone crosses from words into real-world proximity, the game changes completely. Behind the scenes, the WNBA ecosystem tensed up. Media executives whispered. Producers debated whether covering the story was worth the backlash. Some shows avoided the topic entirely. Others addressed it cautiously, stripping out names, softening language, tiptoeing around Angel Reese's role in the storm. The silence wasn't neutral, it was protective. Angel Reese remained quiet, and that quiet became fuel. Supporters argued she couldn't control fans. Critics fired back that leadership meant responsibility. Every hour without a statement hardened opinions. The longer she stayed silent, the more the narrative slipped out of her hands and into the hands of people who were angry, defensive, and dangerous. The conflict deepened when Whitlock claimed he wasn't alone. Privately, other media figures reached out. Some admitted they'd received similar messages after questioning Reese or the culture surrounding her. None wanted to go public. Careers were at stake, reputations, safety. One journalist allegedly told Whitlock, "It's not worth it. You say one wrong thing, and your life turns upside down." That admission cracked the story wide open. This wasn't about Angel Reese versus Jason Whitlock anymore. This was about control, about who gets to speak in women's basketball, and who gets punished for stepping out of line. The WNBA, riding unprecedented attention thanks to rivalries with Caitlin Clark and a new generation of stars, suddenly found itself exposed. Growth had come with a cost, and that cost was volatility. Social media turned toxic. Hashtags, calling for Whitlock to be fired, trended alongside posts, glorifying the threats. Some fans framed the emails as accountability. Others called them necessary protection against harmful voices. The line between defense and violence blurred, and no one in power stepped in to draw it clearly. Then the pressure reached the league offices. Sponsors started asking questions, not publicly but privately. Quiet emails, quiet calls. Was this situation going to escalate? Would the league address it? Could Angel Reese's brand withstand association with threats, even indirect ones? The same protection that had insulated her from criticism now threatened to backfire. And still, nothing was said. That silence became the loudest statement of all. Whitlock doubled down. He accused the league and its media partners of cowardice, of allowing intimidation to fester because confronting it was inconvenient. He warned that if this culture continued, honest commentary in women's basketball would disappear entirely. And whether people liked him or hated him, one truth became unavoidable. Someone was trying to scare critics into submission, and it was working. The first shocking twist wasn't just the threats themselves. It was the realization that fear had become a tool, that too many powerful people were willing to look the other way while it was being used. And as the emails kept coming, growing darker and more specific by the day, one terrifying question loomed over the entire league. If this was how critics were treated now, what would happen next when the stakes got even higher? By the next morning, the situation had spiraled completely out of control. What started as threats in a private inbox was now a full-scale digital siege. Jason Whitlock's mentions exploded overnight. Thousands of replies, endless quote tweets, accounts with no history, no faces, no real names, all repeating the same lines like a chant. Shut up. Leave Angel alone. You're done. It didn't feel organic. It felt programmed. That's when Whitlock dropped the next revelation, and it changed everything. He claimed analysts reached out to him privately, warning that a wave of the harassment appeared amplified, not proven, not confirmed, but suspicious. Dozens of accounts created within the same short window, identical posting rhythms, copy-pasted phrases, the kind of patterns usually associated with coordinated campaigns, not emotional fans acting alone. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about rage, it was about machinery. And then came the second major twist. One of the emails mentioned his home address, not a city, not a state, specific details, enough to send a chill straight through the conversation. That single line transformed the narrative from online harassment into real-world intimidation. Whitlock said that was the moment he stopped seeing this as sports controversy and started seeing it as something darker. An attempt to control speech through fear. The league went silent in a way that felt calculated. No condemnation, no distancing, no acknowledgement. That silence echoed louder than any statement ever could. Behind closed doors, media executives panicked, producers weighed risks. Some shows cut segments at the last minute, others discussed the story without naming Angel Reese at all, as if saying her name might summon backlash. And yet, her presence was everywhere. Angel Reese continued to trend. Clips resurfaced. Old debates reignited. Rivalries with Caitlin Clark were dragged back into the spotlight. Fans framed the situation as another example of Reese being targeted unfairly. Critics argued the culture around her had grown hostile to dissent. Both sides dug in deeper. Nobody listened. Everyone shouted, then whispers started circulating, quiet, unconfirmed, but persistent. Journalists admitted, off the record, that they avoided criticizing certain WNBA stars, not because they lacked opinions, because the cost was too high. One commentator allegedly told a colleague, "It's not worth having your family dragged into it." Another reportedly said, "You can praise all day." One critique, and it's open season. Fear wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was shaping coverage in real time. The escalation didn't stop there. Sponsors began monitoring sentiment aggressively. Brand managers watched timelines like hawks. No public moves, just internal alarms. The league, enjoying record attention thanks to Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, and the new generation of stars, now faced a nightmare scenario: growth powered by chaos, attention fueled by outrage, and a narrative spinning beyond anyone's control. Whitlock escalated again. He suggested that this culture wasn't accidental, that modern sports had merged with celebrity protection, where brands, images, and revenue streams were guarded fiercely. In that environment, critics weren't debated, they were neutralized, not necessarily by athletes themselves, but by ecosystems that thrived on loyalty and punishment. Say the wrong thing, and the mob handles the rest. Angel Reese still said nothing. That silence became gasoline. Supporters insisted she was doing the smart thing. Critics accused her of hiding behind the chaos. Every interpretation hardened into belief. The longer it lasted, the more impossible it became for her to step in without triggering another explosion. Then another bomb dropped. Whitlock revealed that he wasn't the only one receiving threats tied to Angel Reese criticism. Others just hadn't gone public. Fear had kept them quiet. That single claim reframed the entire scandal. This wasn't one man versus the internet. This was a warning system working exactly as intended. And the most chilling realization settled in. If intimidation could silence critics now, while the league was still growing, what would happen when the money got bigger? When Team USA decisions, Olympic narratives, and global branding were on the line? If this was the precedent being set, the future wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. As night fell, Whitlock hinted he was sitting on more evidence. Messages, patterns, details he hadn't released yet. He said he was weighing his next move carefully, because once certain lines were crossed, there was no going back. The escalation had reached a point of no return. And the second major twist wasn't just that the threats felt organized, it was the realization that fear itself had become a feature of the system, not a bug, and the league was running out of places to hide. By the time the story fully broke, the damage was already done. This wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was a fracture running straight through the WNBA's public image. Timelines turned into battlegrounds. One side framed Jason Whitlock as a provocateur finally facing consequences. The other saw a chilling warning shot fired at anyone who dared question the league's rising stars. There was no middle ground, only noise, fury, and fear. Only noise, fury, and fear. Fans mobilized fast. Hashtags surged. Some openly mocked the threats, calling them deserved energy. Others recoiled in horror. asking how death threats had become acceptable in sports discourse. The comments were ruthless. Journalists were tagged and challenged to pick a side. Silence became suspicious. Speaking up became dangerous. The emotional temperature rose by the hour. Inside locker rooms, the tension was palpable. Players whispered about media training and staying clean. Veterans warned rookies to be careful online. Younger stars watched closely, realizing how quickly praise could flip into chaos. Angel Reese's name hovered over every conversation even when it wasn't mentioned. Her silence was dissected relentlessly. Supporters defended her right to stay quiet. Critics argued leadership meant drawing a line. Either way, the pressure on her intensified. Media organizations felt it too. Editors hesitated. Producers pulled segments. Some shows addressed the controversy without names, skirting the edges to avoid backlash. Others leaned in, but cautiously, layering disclaimers and distancing language. The result was obvious. Coverage changed. Tone softened. Critique blurred into caution. Fear didn't just exist, it dictated decisions. Then came the league's response, or rather, the lack of one. The WNBA issued no clear condemnation of the threats, no strong statement separating criticism from violence, no reassurance to journalists. That silence landed hard. To some, it felt like complicity. To others, strategic avoidance. Either way, it left a vacuum and the internet rushed to fill it with speculation. Sponsors watched closely. Brand managers tracked sentiment minute by minute. No announcements were made, but behind the scenes, conversations shifted. Risk assessments, optics, crisis scenarios. Angel Reese represented immense value, but controversy has a price. The same spotlight that elevated her now threatened to scorch everything around her. Prominent voices finally weighed in. Some defended free speech outright. Others urged empathy, cautioning against inflaming already volatile dynamics. A few former players warned that this path where criticism invites threats could poison the league's future. Each take added fuel. Each opinion hardened sides further. And through it all, Whitlock stood firm. He said the reaction proved his point. That intimidation worked because too many were afraid to call it out. He warned that if the culture didn't change, honest conversation in women's basketball would become extinct, whether people agreed with him or not. The fear he described was now visible everywhere. Angel Reese remained quiet. And the cost of that quiet grew heavier by the day. Every hour without a statement became a headline of its own. Was she being advised to stay silent? Was she protecting her brand? Or was she trapped in a storm she never asked for, watching others weaponize her name? As emotions peaked and positions calcified, one truth became unavoidable. The fallout wasn't fading, it was deepening. Relationships strained, trust eroded, and the league's rapid rise suddenly felt fragile, balanced on a knife's edge. Because behind the outrage, behind the hashtags, behind the silence, a far more dangerous question lingered, one that no statement could erase. What happens next if the proof goes public, and the fear everyone feels turns into undeniable evidence? Just when it seemed like the storm couldn't grow any darker, the story twisted again, quietly, surgically, and far more dangerously than before. Late one night, as timelines slowed and outrage fatigue began to set in, Jason Whitlock hinted at something he hadn't shared yet. Not opinions, not speculation. Evidence. Messages, he said, went beyond rage and crossed into coordination. The kind of material that doesn't just spark debate, it forces consequences. According to Whitlock, the emails weren't just violent, they were structured. Time-stamped patterns, repeated language across supposedly unrelated accounts, references to talking points that mirrored social media narratives almost word for word. This wasn't just anger spilling over. It looked like a system activating. And once that idea took hold, everything changed. Behind closed doors, panic replaced confidence. Media executives began asking legal questions. Quietly, what could be aired? What couldn't? What happens if private emails become public exhibits? Some outlets preemptively distanced themselves, scrubbing older segments, softening past commentary, revisiting editorial decisions. Fear wasn't loud, it was procedural. Then came the most unsettling detail. Whitlock claimed one message, referenced future consequences, not threats of violence but of access, blacklisting, pressure campaigns. The suggestion that continued criticism would make his professional life very difficult? That was the moment this stopped looking like fan outrage and started looking like leverage, influence, power being flexed without fingerprints. The implications were explosive. If true, it meant the outrage machine wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. And Angel Reese's name sat at the center of it, whether she wanted it there or not. Her silence, once defensible, now felt heavy, not guilty, but consequential, because in moments like this, absence becomes interpretation, and interpretation becomes narrative. League officials reportedly monitored the situation closely, walking a tightrope between protecting a star and protecting the league's credibility. Any move risked backlash. Condemn the threats, and you alienate loyal fans. Say nothing, and you appear complicit. The longer it dragged on, the worse both options looked. Rivalries simmered beneath the surface. Comparisons resurfaced. Caitlin Clark's composure versus Angel Reese's fire. Marketability versus volatility. Fair or not, the contrast was being drawn everywhere by fans, by sponsors, by media voices too cautious to say it outright. And that tension fed the narrative that some stars were safer to criticize than others. Then Whitlock dropped his final warning. He said he was deciding whether to release everything unredacted, every subject line, every phrase, every pattern, not for revenge but for transparency, because once intimidation becomes normalized, silence becomes mandatory, and that, in his words, would be the real death of sports media. The threat wasn't loud, it was implied. If he went public, careers wouldn't just be embarrassed, they'd be exposed. Networks, campaigns, possibly people who never intended to be part of the story at all. The fallout wouldn't be contained to one athlete or one critic, it would ripple outward, forcing the league to confront questions it had avoided for years. Angel Reese still hadn't spoken. Some believed she was being advised to wait it out, others believed any statement now would be weaponized instantly. But as the clock ticked, the window to control the narrative narrowed. Silence, once protective, now risked becoming permanent damage. And that's where everything froze. Whitlock, holding the evidence, the league, holding its breath, Angel Reese, holding her silence. One decision remained, one move that could either defuse the situation or blow it wide open. Because if those emails ever saw daylight, the conversation wouldn't be about opinions or criticism anymore. It would be about power, about fear, and about how far some people were willing to go to protect a name. And the scariest part, no one knew who would survive once the truth was finally released. Now it's on you, because this story doesn't end with Jason Whitlock, Angel Reese, or a stack of emails sitting in someone's inbox. It ends with what we, as fans, viewers, and voices in this sport, decide to tolerate. If criticism can trigger threats, if fear can silence debate, and if power can hide behind fandom, then women's basketball isn't just growing, it's being reshaped in the dark. This isn't about picking sides. It's about drawing lines. You can support Angel Reese and still reject intimidation. You can disagree with Jason Whitlock and still defend the right to speak without fear. Growth means accountability. Stardom means responsibility. And silence, at moments like this, isn't neutral, it changes outcomes. So ask yourself the hard questions. Should the league step in and condemn threats no matter who they're aimed at? Should stars speak when their names are used as shields for violence? And how much power should any brand, any player have over public conversation? Drop your honest take below. No scripts, no slogans, just truth. If you believe women's basketball deserves transparency, courage, and real dialogue, make your voice heard. Like the video, share it, subscribe, stay engaged. Because if this moment passes without a line being drawn, the next scandal won't just be louder, it'll be worse. The next scandal won't just be louder, it'll be worse.